right, well, I hope you all enjoyed the film. I know I loved it. I'm Amy Bullen. I'm Providence's Vice President of Development and Community Relations. And I have the pleasure of introducing our panelists this evening for our post-film discussion. So joining us this evening, we have Carol Beatty, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Disabilities, Megan Keller, Self-Advocate and Providence Board Member, Elizabeth Pittman, Self-Advocate, Laura Howell, CEO of the Maryland Association of Community Services, and Laura Maddox, partner at Dewey's Partners. So I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us this evening, and I want you to know how honored we are to have each of you here with us. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Christina. Christina George, our Director of Quality Enhancement, who's going to be our moderator this evening. So, Christina, sorry. Just a little housekeeping for our panelists. We have one mic that we're going to pass back and forth, but I'm going to be standing at the wings with a separate mic if you guys,
I got one.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy. I just want to say how honored I am to be able to be up here with our panelists. Just amazing people up here. So thank you so much for having me here. Megan and Elizabeth, do you want to go first? Get it out of the way. I know you're nervous. It's okay. We don't have to be nervous, right? All right. Okay. It is a nice audience. Okay, Megan and Elizabeth, could you share with us, you're both great self-advocates at Providence, we're very proud to have you. Could you share with us how it makes you feel when you're included in your community? Amy has a mic.
It makes me feel wonderful. It makes me feel wonderful that people will actually take the time and effort it takes to feel inclusive.
What about you, Elizabeth?
It makes me feel important that people would take me out in the community, even though I am usually blind and use a walking stick. And I also feel important that I'm just up here because sorry.
Give her a round of applause.
We also want to know, Megan and Elizabeth, what are some ways you think the community can help your opinions and voices be heard? How can you make sure your opinions are heard in your community?
You can actually use your voice or you can actually type on social media, but you can just let people hear what you have to say and make sure that everyone truly does. You're not using like sarcasm or plays on words or anything. It's like you're saying what you truly believe, so no one will have any false inferences. They know it's going down and must right around to you.
Elizabeth, tell the audience how it makes you feel when people listen to your opinions.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Tell our audience how it makes you feel when people listen to your opinions.
It makes me feel special that when somebody if they don't like my opinions, well, they just have to listen to what I have to say, and and maybe a victim believe.
Thank you, ladies. Okay, I'm going to go to Secretary Beatty next. Secretary Beatty, thank you for all the work you do on behalf of Marylanders with disabilities and their families. As a state, we have come a long way over the years towards supporting full community inclusion for all people. Could you talk for a moment about the progress we've made and what challenges might still lie ahead?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for having me here, being part of this esteemed panel. And also, I was amazed with this film, and thank you for presenting it to the community. I've had a long career in services for people with disabilities in Maryland, and most of it was in working in the nonprofit arena. But I have spent the last 9 years in state government, so I'm going to take that question from that perspective. That's okay. So I think we have made a lot of progress, and I think what government can do to assist with making sure that progress remains steady and moving forward. And when I say government, I really mean at the city level, like here in Annapolis, or at the county level, like here in Anne Arundel County, or even at the state or federal level. I think we can work on things, we call them policies, but work on things that remove barriers to people being included in their neighborhoods and in their communities and in their schools. And I'll give you a couple of examples of what we've done in Maryland, and that would be things like eliminating or getting rid of sheltered workshops and eliminating the ability to pay people with disabilities less than what their peers who don't have disabilities make in doing the same kind of work. And that was done, we were the second state in the United States that eliminated that. We also, we have closed institutions for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, including people with autism. We still have a little under 100 people living in state-run facilities, but really those pictures that you saw in this video, we don't have them anymore in Maryland, and that is a really good thing. And then what we can do as a state is increase and improve housing and housing supports for people with autism in various ways. And I think we see that in Maryland, and we are continually seeing very creative pilots of those kinds of things, and we as government can help support that. And so that's the other way that government can really impact the ability for people to stay included, to be included. I say stay included because people are born included. You know, they're born as part of a family, as part of a community, and so what we need to do is make sure that those things stay in place for people so we can promote and fund good policy, good practices that increase that ability for young people and older adults to stay included. And that's things like, in our department, we have the Maryland Technology Assistance Program, and we fund high-level technology where people can try it out, make sure it works for them, and then we have a loan program that can increase their ability to purchase the kind of technology that will make them more independent and also included in their communities. We also see things like the Ethan Saylor Alliance, which is a program that our department runs to increase communication and understanding between people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and law enforcement. And the training includes people with disabilities to be trainers. And so that's another way that we can alleviate what we see a lot of across the United States in sort of bad interactions between people with disabilities and law enforcement. And then finally, I just want to mention TERP Succeed, which is a University of Maryland program where people with intellectual disabilities are admitted as students, live on campus, and have a really robust student experience on campus. These are just a few things that I think increase our ability to make sure that young people and young adults are ready for their own experience in community and to be able to pick and choose friends and work and things that enhance and enrich their lives. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Secretary Beatty. I'm going to go to Laura Howell next. Laura, your organization, the Maryland Association of Community Services, is very instrumental in advocating for people and families at the legislative level. I'm curious to know what is being done at the legislature to ensure our laws benefit and include all people. Do we still have work to do? And what can we do as individual constituents to keep inclusion top of mind for our representatives?
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. No, we're done. That's it. Nothing left to do. No. Well, to build on what Secretary Beatty said, there is a lot of discussion in Annapolis. So we do a lot of our work in the state capitol here, or because that's where state laws are made that affect Marylanders. And there's a lot of work that happens every year. There are always a lot of pieces of legislation that relate to disability, developmental disability, autism, and so we work collectively as a community on those issues every year. Secretary Beatty talked about some of the really big issues that I think we've made a lot of progress on, and talked about issues where we need to make more progress. I wanted to touch a little bit on some issues over the last couple of sessions that have really been specific, or where the autism community has really played a big role. And some of those bills have related to, interaction with the police, and how to help people have more safety when they are out in the world. Some of this had, Carol talked about the Youth and Sailor Alliance, which goes back a number of years. But lately there has been legislation around should the police be able to identify someone who has a disability, a developmental disability, who is autistic. Can people voluntarily choose to have that on a license or a state identification, or somehow be able to have that be known, have that in the police computer system. And that's been a little controversial. Some people who are autistic are for it, some are not. Some families are really for it, some are not. Can a family make that decision for an adult child? There's a lot of discussion about that. So, well, it seems like it might be a really simple, sure, why would you not do something that would help keep people safe? It gets more complicated as you flesh out what is that going to look like as a state law and how it's implemented, and it might be a really good idea, because it really help keep somebody safe in that kind of interaction you saw in the film, where they weren't looking at an ID, they were looking at somebody they perceived to be resisting arrest and took action. And that's where I think Youth and Sailor Alliance, all the training that Carol's department is doing, really helps. So I think when your second part of your question was, what can we do? Because we certainly have progress left to make. So I would say, and I know some of you have spent a lot of time in Annapolis, join us in the state capitol. It's a lovely time of year, mid-January to mid-April every year, 90 balmy, sunny, warm days in Annapolis. But it's really important, and legislators really care, don't take this the wrong way, a lot more about Megan and Elizabeth and Lauren than they care about Carol too. Maybe me not so much, but I'm down there doing a lot of work. But they really want to hear from their constituents. They want to hear from people they consider real people, so not, people who are paid advocates, but people whose lives we're talking about. And so coming to Annapolis to testify on a bill, if that feels daunting, come visit your legislator. We have this big day, fantastic day every year called Developmental Disabilities Day at the legislature, and 800 of our closest friends from around the state come to Annapolis, and we take over the halls of Annapolis. It's a beautiful thing. That's a really great way to get your feet wet, and because there are a lot of people who come every year, and then we always have a lot of new people. And the new people can team up with the people who know their way around the halls of Annapolis, and really get to feel that in kind of a safe way, and go meet your legislator. If you don't want to come to Annapolis, write an email, sign up for, the Autism Society, the ARC Maryland, all these organizations that make information really readily accessible to families and people with disabilities, to know what's happening every session and to be able to take action. So those are all things I would recommend.
Thank you, Laura. Last but not least, Lauren Maddox. We're very happy to have you on stage from your perspective as a parent. I have a couple questions for you, but let's start with your parent perspective. Can you share some things we can do as parents to best support our children?
Thanks for having us here. This has been great. I see my husband in the audience. I think the big thing is that we've experienced is we started out in California when our son, who's now 21, was little, and getting into programs. And the one thing in the video that really stuck out to me is the mom who talks about the underdiagnosis and having to fight for a diagnosis. And, and I think her point is spot on, especially for families of color, it's even harder. But we had a similar experience where it was really difficult to say, we're pretty sure something's going on here. Like, could it be autism? No, I don't think it's autism. Well, we're pretty sure there's something going on here, and you're just constantly, fighting that fight, and you start to feel a little bit like you're seeing things or something. And so that sort of validation early is really important for parents to say, no, you're observing things that are real, and it's okay to, push. And then a little bit of support and receptivity of, okay, let's run this out. Let's figure out if this is actually real or not. So that would be, I would say, one thing is those early years are so hard because you're just trying to get clarity on what's going on so that you can get help and support. And that really, parents are your best allies in that, your other parents, because they'll say, yeah, that was my experience too, or have you checked out this, or can you go do that? So we found that in the early years, the parents helped show us the way and guide us even more than the professionals. I think things have gotten a lot better, but that was a steep hill to climb early on. And then I'd say once you've got the diagnosis, then you're in the stage of, okay, what do we do now? What can help? And as you saw in the video, and many of us experience, it's such a broad spectrum. So finding the resources, figuring out which are the resources that are right for your child, it's a daunting prospect, and you're just running all over the place, going to, speech therapist, physical therapist, occupational therapist, vision therapist, like all the things. You're just running around all the time. And so I appreciate your point about coming to the legislature. And I actually said to my husband recently, I finally feel like we're getting to a stage of the game where we can do more advocacy. But when you're in the thrush of it, you're just about, what do I need to do for my child? And getting through the day, honestly. So I say, support parent networks, and then resource navigation. We're at a new stage now where he's a young adult, and it's like starting over again. Like we sort of figured out the system that happened in the early years, and then in K-12, and then he graduated, and then it's like we went off the side of the cliff. There's we're out there in the wilderness going, okay, where do we start? Where do we look for resources? And we'll get to this in a second, but I'm in professionally in a business where we work with a lot of government systems, and so I'm pretty comfortable navigating my way around the agencies. this has been unbelievable. I can't believe the stack of paperwork, and then I go from one to the other. Well, have you applied for this? No, I never even heard about that. Well, have you applied for this? And I said, can't there be like a front door to the system where you go in and you say, here's your son Jackson. Here are all the things he's eligible. Now, here's, here are all the forks you can take in this. But no, it's really very sort of one, and if that exists, I'd love to know it, but we haven't found it. So that's one of the things Rick and I do a lot of sharing about our son. We're very vocal about his autism, because I feel like that helps with the stigma and helps create the space in the world for him to help keep him safe and help him thrive and pursue his dreams. But we've got to kind of elbow our way to make that space for him. And part of it means pushing on the systems to be a little more responsive to kind of meet people where they are. And I know that's true of systems in general. It's a very tall order. It's not an easy thing to do. But I said to friends recently, we're people with some means, some resources, some education, support networks, and this is incredibly daunting, and I feel like we're out here floundering. And I said, if this is as hard with all of that we have going for us, imagine for families that are single-parent families, or who are working 2 jobs, or doing those things. It's impossible. So that would be the one thing. I'd love to see more navigation and more support.
Thank you. You mentioned your professional focus, so an important part of that is to work on equity and inclusion and strengthen organizations. So what can we do as organizations, as employers, to celebrate everyone's strengths and break down any preconceived misconceptions about people?
It's that space thing. We've got to give people room to be who they are, and then create some space for that. So, I have a small business based in Annapolis, and we do a lot of work in equity and inclusion. And I was saying to Amy and Karen recently, I'm in these conversations all day long talking about equity and inclusion, which is so vital. And it's a rare day that people with disabilities are part of that conversation. It's really rare. And so, I said, well, they're like hanging out here over the side. We're talking about all these other forms, which are just as important, vitally important, big, huge barriers for people to climb. And this group of people with disabilities is hanging out to the side of that conversation. So I think that is something we need to do is one, truly include them into the conversation. And then secondly, I'm going to give Rick a shout out on this. He works for an engineering firm, and he had a young man come through who, behaved a little different during the interview. And he, kind of spotted that maybe there was something, I'm going to cry, that there was something a little different. And he said to his team, they said, no, this guy's a little quirky. I don't know that, this is going to be a fit. And he said, can we give him another shot? And he came back around, and he explained to his team that, maybe the kid is, on the spectrum, which he is. And then the team sat down with him, really with that new lens, thinking, oh my gosh, something that I took as a negative, or that seemed like this something that we couldn't deal with. As soon as they had that lens of, oh wait, maybe if we created some space for him to be who he is, and he's doing great. They hired him, and he's doing great, and he's really added to the team. And I thought, what if you hadn't been in that room to say, just give him a second shot? So I would say that's the big thing as employers for all of us, and it's a tough thing to do, but we've got to kind of ask the question of maybe this person is acting this way, not because of anything, it's just who they are, and isn't that okay? It's so that they're a little different. They have other strengths, and really give time and space to explore those strengths. And I know myself, as I go through the hiring process, I'll be my first critic. I'm not always that patient. And so, when he told me the story, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do this. So I would say that's something as employers, is just take a minute to try and understand and connect with somebody, understand where they're coming from, and then give them a little bit of room to show up as who they truly are, and you might be surprised.
Thank you. How are we on time? We good on time? one question. This can be for anybody. I'm gonna focus on, we just saw a film that really focused on autism. They mentioned how we are seeing more representation in film and media, people with different disabilities. How does that make all of us feel? Maybe Megan or Elizabeth, Lauren, Laura, Secretary Beatty? How does it make you feel to see people like you on the screen?
I think it feels great that me and other people with disabilities can still be included no matter what you can and can't do. You're still the same as them, but it really count in your heart and your brain. You have a disability, but you're still totally capable of thinking and also of acting somewhat.
Anyone else? How does it make you feel to see someone like you on the screen?
It makes me feel special because it makes people believe that even though I'm really blind, it makes me feel I can be an actor one day. One day I would also like to be a advocate of disability.
I would just say it's about time.
All right, thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate everybody.